DraftKings Defense Analysis Pod. I'm Jason Gilbo, JGilbo11. With me is Russell Clay at Russell J. Clay. Running through some defenses for week 2. A lot of decent options. It feels like there's a lot of value you can potentially take advantage of.
Certainly a lot of value, and as we've seen, with some of the quarterback injuries, some teams are already getting pretty, we're looking to target them. I mean, one of the teams doesn't have a quarterback injury, but there is, a lot of pain. I am a Rams fan at heart. My analysis is not totally biased by that other than Todd Gurley, but my goodness, I hope you didn't watch that game yesterday, and if you did, I'm so sorry.
That was bad. I tortured myself and stayed up to the end of it, and you and I are both on the East Coast, so it wasn't like it was early. We were up late.
No, I was up super late, just angry the whole time. Chip Kelly just stomping a hole in us, and it was bad. It was bad.
It was, and looking at cash game defenses here, you're already kind of going back and picking on the Rams after what you saw from last night. You're talking about Seattle; they're at 3,800.
Yeah, and I think what we know about the Rams at this point is Todd Gurley is a tremendous running back, but we also know, I mean, Case Keenum's got a big enough sample now, and especially with what we saw yesterday, it's not that he doesn't know the plays. It's just simply that he can't get the ball there. And he can't, his awareness is not good enough to avoid big mistakes. And I think we just have to be honest with what he is. And Russell Wilson, and we'll get into him in a second, but that ankle injury could be an issue. It certainly was in the second half of his game in week 1. That sort of game flow thing could be an issue, but the Seahawks defense is just too good. They're going to be able to spy on Gurley. Rams do play well against the Seahawks normally, but with Case Keenum there, I'm pretty confident he'll make a mistake or two by the end of the game.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement. I mean, you saw how the way 49ers played them last night. It was just, you stack 8 in the box. You put the secondary on those receivers one-on-one and just kind of go to town on Gurley and see what you can do there. And then now that you put a Seattle secondary that is better than San Francisco's, I don't expect it to go any better.
No, I don't either. My other cash game option here is a bit of a risk, but with price included, I really like it. The Ravens versus the Browns. Obviously, with the Browns losing RG3 after week 1 to a shoulder injury, looking at Josh McCown, who I don't particularly mind, but overall, you kind of look at what the Browns have. They do have Corey Coleman on the outside, but really it's just a bunch of dink and dunk type of stuff with Duke Johnson and Gary Barnidge. I like both of those players, but overall, in terms of actually scoring points, I think they could do well in a PPR format and still not kill the Ravens in terms of, actually scoring. So I like what I've seen for this Ravens team. I mean, they only allowed 175 yards to the Bills last week. Sammy Watkins injured, but they actually looked pretty good. So we're still in this gray area where we don't quite know what the Ravens defense is yet, but as far as one game sample and, returning a bunch of guys from injury, I actually think we can be slightly optimistic about this Ravens team.
Yeah, I'm actually in agreement there. I think, Baltimore, we saw them last year. Obviously, it was a defense we looked to target against. This year, I'm going to be a little bit hesitant to do so. I still will be taking some shots. But as you kind of stated, I think, even if Cleveland puts up a touchdown or two, it's not going to be anything substantial to knock Baltimore off the table. I mean, we look at this Eagles defense. I think you can kind of rank a little bit similarly to Baltimore. So obviously getting the Browns here, I think last week was kind of a good sample size is what you could possibly get.
Yep, definitely.
In terms of GPP defenses, you look at the Los Angeles Rams at home against Seattle. You talked about them kind of playing them tough always, and possibly Wilson being a little bit banged up with his ankle injury.
So while the offense I've pretty much given up on, I'm still fairly confident in this defense, at least the front 7. And this, I'd say, depending on what the reports are with Wilson, is how you play this one. If he's, looking like he's healthy by 1 p.m. Maybe you just take the week off from the Rams. But, I mean, they did this all last year, too, where they'd struggle against really bad teams and then, play well against the Seahawks and the Cardinals. So this this is interesting in terms of getting pressure. Basically, the 49ers' whole game plan last night was to get the ball out quickly, run quick passes, and that's going to be how they play the whole year. But if Russell Wilson is hurt and sort of just laying back there in the shotgun, not able to run that much, I mean, Aaron Donald, Robert Quinn, still elite defenders in the NFL, still going to get a ton of pressure. We saw the Seahawks line is still a big liability. That matchup is really good for the Rams. Whether, the Seahawks just game plan for those quick passes like they saw the 49ers do, that certainly could be the case, and they certainly could, pick them apart with Wilson. But if he doesn't play or it's reported that he's really limited, I think this is a great defense to target. That'll be, 1%.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, especially at their prices. I mean, especially we're going to get to a couple other teams here who are cheaper than the Rams. So I think they might actually kind of gain a little bit of ownership. Looking at Washington, 2,800 taking on Dallas at home. We saw Dallas, it was really limited for what they could do in terms of stretching the ball down the field. Dez was really a non-factor. It was just kind of a lot of Cole Beasley, a lot of Jason Witten.
Certainly a lot of Cole Beasley, a lot more than we were expecting. As far as the Redskins defense goes, obviously they got shelled by, the Steelers, Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and D'Angelo Williams. But that's not what this Cowboys offense is right now, If Tony Romo was healthy, yeah, that'd pretty much be what they are with Dez and, that line and a really solid, athletic, young running back. But where they stand now, this is not a good offense. And sure, they can play ball control, which they pretty much did last week, but they weren't successful. Dak threw, he was in top 5 in passing attempts last week. And he just couldn't move the ball. Sure, Jason Witten's going to get his in terms of receptions, but in terms of yardage, I'm not too confident in anyone on this team. Redskins, I think they're better than what we saw on Monday night, especially from the defensive side of things. I like Preston Smith. I like Josh Norman still, so I actually think they're going to be fine. And if Dak, the Redskins offense didn't show out either, I think they're pretty solid. If they can get ahead and get a lead and make Dak, take some gambles, I think there could be, a big defensive day here.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement. I like Washington. They are certainly they're probably going to be a cash game viable offense just for me personally. But I'm in agreement. I think looking at the way this one could play out, Giants really never got out to that big lead. It was always very close. It was just kind of a field goal game. They didn't have to really air the ball out. If that's the case here, there could be a lot more turnovers in play, and especially if Josh Norman can shift over. We saw that. I was surprised that he didn't go out and shadow Brown. I really was. I was expecting a guy you pay that kind of money to go out and do that. But I expect him to kind of do that here. I expect Dallas to run into a pretty big wall.
Certainly.
Next one here, interesting one, and I definitely like this call a lot. Jacksonville Jaguars, 2,300 on the road at San Diego. San Diego just lost Keenan Allen, and I think that's kind of really the big part of it here, why they're kind of in the featured 5 role.
And the Chargers just gave up on Melvin Gordon as soon as Keenan got hurt. It doesn't really make sense because they were up 24-0 or 21-0. But they just wanted to go to that Danny Woodhead offense, which is successful in comeback mode. It's successful in fantasy, but it's just not a viable, real NFL strategy. And with this Jaguars team, with some of their young weapons, they're going to make mistakes, but they really didn't look that bad against Aaron Rodgers, who, that offense looks good. Especially, if they can get anything out of Devontae Adams, that offense looks really good. So I think in terms of what we're looking at for the Jaguars, they're a high upside and high mistake team. They're probably going to allow, 17 to 20 points, kind of like they're projected, but of big plays. They have, Jalen Ramsey, Miles Jack, Dante Fowler. Like, they just have some serious potential there. And I just think, they didn't look bad. And I think this is a good matchup against the team that just lost their best player. So, yeah, I'm in.
I like Jacksonville for all the reasons that you mentioned. There is a lot of young guys there, a lot of talent. You look at this, you look at this Chargers offense and you go, okay, your focal points are now Danny Woodhead, Travis Benjamin, Dontrell Inman. I mean, it's just kind of like, all right, I'll take some shots there. So I'm with you. I like Jacksonville really as a deep kind of value GPP play.
Certainly, yeah, and I mean it's 2,300, so yeah, I'm okay with taking the risk there.
Yeah, definitely. And you look, I mean, Aaron Rodgers had to throw kind of a one-handed arm where he was being dragged down. It was like they could have held them to, below that team total that was projected. I was kind of impressed by Jacksonville.
And that's what I mean. I mean, Aaron Rodgers making that throw while he was getting taken down, a perfect, over the shoulder throw. Phillip Rivers is great, but he doesn't have anyone to, go and catch that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it could be a fun one. It could be an ugly one for a while now for Chargers.
Definitely.
So let's go wrap things up with the DraftKings defense analysis. Be sure to check out dailyfantasycafe.com for all the great tools and content.